Hey everyone, Alex here, your favorite Tastefully Simple food lady, and I want to give you a great recipe to make when it is cold and drizzly out, or you don't have a lot of time to be going to the grocery store and getting one of those 30 ingredient meals. Y'all know that I love to focus on things that are easy and delicious and the whole family will eat. And with one picky child under my belt and another one who eats everything, sometimes that's a challenge. So we are going to be making Bayou Bourbon pork chops today in the slow cooker. The slow cooker is, of course, the recession fighting machine. It's a great way to take a cut of meat that ordinarily wouldn't be very tender and make it into a masterpiece. So let's get started. So today we've got a 7-ingredient recipe, really, really easy. And let's quickly go through what you're going to need for this recipe. You are going to need 3 to 4 large cooking potatoes, 3 to 4 large apples. Mine are not very large, but that's okay because I only want them in there for flavor, not necessarily as a side dish. You are also going to need 1/3 of a cup of chicken broth, 1/3 of a cup of our Bayou Bourbon glaze, some onion, and some seasoned salt. So a lot of people typically have these in their pantry, and if you don't, you know who to call. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, of course, you're also going to need pork chops, 5 to 6 large pork chops. You can use bone-in or boneless. I always use bone-in in a slow cooker because I just find that they stay extra tender and it's very easy to get the meat off the bone after they've been cooking for that period of time. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. You are going to take your pork chops and you're going to put them in your baking dish and you're going to season them with 1/2 to a full teaspoon of our Tastefully Simple seasoned salt. Super, super easy. Now, where are the rest of my pork chops? Well, through the magic of video editing, of course, I have already gotten them prepped for this dish. So, before you cook any kind of meat in the slow cooker, just a tip for you, it's a great idea to sear it first. And by searing, all you're doing is cooking it at very, very high heat for a short period of time to lock in the juices and also to make a nice crust on the outside of the meat. Okay, so if you didn't know that, chalk that up to great tip for the day, and that'll make you seem like a cooking superstar the next time you're sharing a recipe. So what we've done here is taken a large frying pan, sprayed it down with a little bit of Pam, and heated it to very, very, very high heat, almost as high as the heat will go. Now I've already prepared 5 of the pork chops beforehand, just so that you can see what they look like and to save time. And let me show you what this beautiful pork chop looks like. Looks like it's just been hanging out on the grill all day. Isn't that great? Looks yummy, doesn't it? Of course, it's almost completely raw inside, so you're not going to serve it this way. But I've done 4 of our pork chops this way. I'm going to do the last pork chop live with all of y'all looking. Now, while I do that, I'm going to be multitasking here, and this is normal multitasking. This is not the multitasking you see on TV and think, oh, how are they doing that? They've got all this stuff ready and prepped to go. So no, we are actually going to real life, real mom multitask while this is cooking. So I want you to go ahead and turn your pan on to high to medium high heat. Okay, don't spray it with the pan yet, but high to medium high heat. And while that's heating up, what I want you to do is take your apples and I want you to slice them thickly. Now, when I say thick, I'm talking 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch slices. Okay, remember, they're going in the slow cooker. And when you're putting any sort of vegetable or side in your slow cooker with your meat, you want it to be a relatively uniform size so that everything cooks evenly. So I've already sliced up a few of our apples, and I'm going to go ahead and slice up the rest here. Of course, I told you to turn your oven on, and I didn't do it myself. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat up on my frying pan here, and I am going to cut my apples. Now, the recipe that usually calls for peeled and sliced apples, but you know what? I know it's all going to get really soft and it's going to cook down in the slow cooker, so I'm going to save myself some time and effort and not peel the apples. So it's really up to you. If you're going to be serving the apples for people to eat and they don't like the peel, take the peel off. That's okay. So I've got 1 apple peeled there, sliced there. I'm going to slice my last apple. Do make sure you wash your apples though and take your stem out. Nobody wants to be chomping on one of those. Okay, so the apples are now prepared. That was easy. We're going to cut up our potatoes while our meat is cooking. Now, if you have a stove that heats up very, very fast, then you're probably ready to put your pork chops on. So liberally spray your pan but you don't want to use an olive oil or a cooking oil because you're not going to get that nice brown sear on your pork chops. So I'm going to take this last pork chop that I need to cook, and you got to bear with me because it's going to be a little noisy here while it cooks, but I'm going to be cutting the potatoes up into 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch slices while I do this. So here's my pork chop going on the pan. Go ahead and flip your chop. You should have a nice set of either grill marks if you're using a grill pan, or it should be nice and browned on one side and look just ready for you to cut into, but of course you're not going to yet. And we're just about done. There we go. Okay, so this is the chop that I just took off the pan. You can see how beautiful that looks. You've got grill marks on both sides. By the way, a grill pan is a great way to fake grilling. So you want to get a nice grill pan, give you some great grill marks. There we go. So the meat is ready to go. I cut up the potatoes and the apples while the meat was cooking. And now it's very, very easy what's going to happen next. You're going to take those potatoes and you're going to layer them in the bottom of your slow cooker. Just loosely layer them and overlap. Nothing fancy, but don't throw them in a big pile. Okay, so now that that's done, what can you figure is going to go next? The apples, of course. Go ahead and take your apple slices and put them on top as well. All right, so we're good to go with the apples and the potatoes. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your onion dried seasoning. I love this stuff. It's so great. You've got 4 different kinds of onions in there, and it smells wonderful. Also prevents you from having to chop onions and cry when you're cooking. Now, if you didn't know, 1 cap of our Tastefully Simple seasonings is 2 tablespoons of our a dry measure. So rather than getting your teaspoon or tablespoon measure out, I want you to go ahead and measure into this about 1/2 capful, which is 1 tablespoon. If you like a little bit more onion, put a little bit more. If your family doesn't like onion, you can put a little bit less. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out about 1/2 capful, and I'm just going to sprinkle that on top. I told you this was easy. Okay, easy. All right, next thing you're going to do, take those beautiful seared pork chops, and you're going to see there's already juice coming out of them. That's going to go all into the slow cooker with your potatoes and your apples. And I want you to just kind of stagger them in the slow cooker, slightly overlapping, but not on top of each other. And that'll allow for moisture and steam to kind of circulate around the apples and around the potatoes and give you this wonderful flavor. Okay, I'm going to pour in the juice that came off of that. Last step. Go ahead and take a bowl, and I want you to pour in 1/3 cup of our Bayou Bourbon glaze. If you've never cooked with this glaze, you really need to do yourself a favor and get some. This is a reduction of molasses, brown sugar, Kentucky bourbon, It is wonderful. It's wonderful as a grilling sauce, but it holds up super well as a slow cooker sauce as well. Then your 1/3 of a cup of chicken broth. Whenever a recipe calls for water, I always try and sub out chicken broth just to add a little bit of extra flavor in there. Take your whisk and whisk that together. Okay, so you've got our Bayou Bourbon glaze. It smells wonderful. And you're going to go ahead and just pour that right over the top of your pork chop mixture. And you will see you've got all these chopped onions and garlic at the bottom of the bowl. Make sure you get all that goodness into the slow cooker. All right, so we are going to go ahead, put our lid on this, turn it to low, and it's going to cook for about 5 to 6 hours until the potatoes are fork tender and the meat is cooked through. When you're done, serve it with a salad, maybe some steamed green beans, and watch your family go nuts. Hope you like it. We'll see you soon.